Bum bum bum, literature gets a look. Legs talk about books. Pages turn and books come and pass, leaving behind memories that were once stories. These stories got read on a podcast or something. It wasn't the beginning, but it'll do. There's your intro. You wanted a fancy intro? We got one.
I think that's the fanciest we're going to get on that.
That's the fanciest. Welcome to Legs Talk About Books, the monthly literature podcast where, guess what? We talk about books.
No. We don't just talk about books. We finish in this book.
We finished it before we got on.
Yeah, but we finished this entire thing, man.
Yeah, you feel so much sense of accomplishment. You don't usually read a whole lot of books.
I read a lot of books. It's just never like a 14-book saga. It's like...
It is like the longest fantasy series ever put to pen.
And admittedly, I didn't go the full distance, but I went long... I read more books than I didn't read.
Yeah.
That's a ridiculous book series where you can be like, I stopped reading halfway through, but then I came back.
And finished the other 8.
Yeah. Then I read more than I didn't read. So it's like,
and you can always go back and try to do the first couple again.
Oh boy.
Be interesting. Apparently, Wheel of Time is famous for inspiring people to reread.
Man, that'd be pretty interesting. Yeah, I can see that because there's a lot of mounting things that happen.
There's a lot of detail. There's a lot of stuff in the first book specifically where Min is giving a prophecy, and there's just all sorts of stuff where it's Matt, I see an eye on a scale weighed against the world. What the hell is up with that? And a bloody handprint and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, we're already going on a tangent. We haven't even introduced ourselves, which, to be fair, we're on the 14th, and this isn't the 14th episode, but we're on the 14th book of Wheel of Time. The last book. I guess 15th if you count the prequel. So we have made it all the way here. I assume that if you're listening, you have been joining us along. If this is your first time, you chose a weird spot to jump on.
Yeah.
We're on the 15th book of a long-running series called Wheel of Time. And this episode is going to be somewhat of a talk about Memory of Light, the last book. But it's also going to be sort of a retrospective on the series as a whole. And also our thoughts on the first season of the show, which we never made a dedicated video for, because those videos did not do very well. They did even worse than the book stuff, surprisingly.
Admittedly, yeah, we couldn't possibly do too awful much on A Memory of Light that's involving no spoilers. It's compounded spoilers at this point.
Yeah, usually at the start of every episode we'll do spoiler-free thoughts. Mm-hmm. And as this series has gone on, it's become more and more difficult. And now it's damn near impossible. We cannot tell you anything about how this book even starts without spoiling the other 13 books. So all we'll say is that, the last book nailed the ending.
The last book actually, I can give some spoiler-free things. The Wheel of Time is in it. And there is many characters.
There's a lot of characters. There's a climactic fight of some kind.
No, that's spoilers.
A battle, some might say.
Yeah.
It's long. That's not a spoiler.
Oh, this is not a spoiler, but yeah, there is a chapter in the... I want to give the full context of this. I listened to it on the audiobook, whereas Joe tends to read it. But a normal book on audiobooks is 10 to 20 hours long. There is a chapter in this book that is 9 hours long. That is almost an entire book.
And it's all one battle.
Oh, God.
And it's from day till night, just all fucking day.
And ridiculous part about it, that chapter flew by.
Oh, yeah.
That chapter went and gone in a day for me.
I had to read it over 3 days, but it was, difficult to put it down. Because I, read for 2 hours, and it'd be, 4 a.m., and I'd be I have to get to sleep, but I don't want to stop.
I thankfully set an entire day out for it, and I was surprised at how fast that day went. I thought it would be is this chapter even done? I did look and do that a couple times, but it was never in, an exasperation. It was always how close are... We're not even at the end yet?
Yeah.
Holy crap, there's so much that's just happened.
There's so much going on. So yeah, this is... there's a lot of worry with a series this long, especially in the modern day where you have stuff like Lost that kind of set this standard for bringing up a whole lot of questions and not answering them. And there are a couple unanswered questions. There's something specifically with the very end that, like, I don't really know what that's supposed to mean. I don't know what happened here.
I'd say there aren't that many unanswered questions. There are still a lot of dangling plots, but that's good, I'd say.
Yeah, there's not a lot of dangling plots. They kind of set it up where, like, here's one of 2 or 3 ways it can go. So they at least let you know, like, here's a direction they're heading. Here's some problems they'll face. They make it clear that, like with pretty much anything, one of the most unrealistic things about fiction in general is that it ends, whereas real life tends to keep going. There's very few times in your life where you solve a problem and then you just live happily ever after and there's no problems after again.
I'm waiting for that.
And Wheel of Time does a perfect job of, like, yes, we have solved our most pressing problem. Yes, there are good times on the horizon. A lot of characters have reached the arc of their plots. They're going to have an easier time. But, like, bad people are still out there. People are still going to have conflicts and fights, and they're not going to get along. And nothing's going to be perfect. But at least you know it's not going to be, like, world-annihilatingly bad.
Yeah.
All of it feels satisfying. There's no part where I was, like, left wanting. There's no part that I'm, like, disappointed by it. Overall, it was an excellent end to the series. And the series overall was excellent. The best fantasy story ever written, in my opinion.
I would say it's one of the best for me. Like,
yeah, you said you still put Lord of the Rings higher than this?
I put Lord of the Rings higher than this just because of everything it did about 6 or 7 decades before this thing was even thought up. So...
yeah, I mean, I'll definitely give it that Lord of the Rings has some influence, but as far as, like, an experience that I like, that I want to go back through, that I want to experience again, that I want to, like, see more world building from, that I want more stories. I want more stories like this. I don't want any more stories like Lord of the Rings. To be fair, there's a lot of them like that already out there.
I myself am that guy that I every once in a while, I do want to just watch the trilogy. And I know that's not exactly the same as the book, but yeah, like that's...
yeah, well, there's a lot of people who, like, rewatch... that's the thing, is, like, I saw every movie in theaters. I have distinct memories of, like, sitting through Return of the King and having to pee really, really bad, but sitting through all 5 of the endings.
I myself love every one of those endings, though, so... but yeah. But that's getting into a review of about Lord of the Rings.
But my point is, I watched it, and I never wanted to watch it again.
Yeah, that's...
I was done. Once was enough. This, I might go back through if I had more time, but time is of limited things to me.
Yeah. Either way.
Fortunately, they have the show.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to go through it again with the show.
Yeah. So
we'll get to that a little bit later.
Yeah, that's a little bit. But, yeah, the book series, fantastic.
Can't recommend it enough.
Neither one of us can't have more than it just, like, tattooed on our chest so that we can be like, read Wheel of Time.
Yes.
It is really, really good.
If you somehow got this far and you're like, I wanted to see what people thought at the end, go fucking read it. Go read it now. Get the audiobook, get the regular book, however you can. Read it. If you find the first book boring, the first is still, like, one of the worst to me. You have to you skip through it maybe. Go to the second or third book, start from there. But just make it through one way or another.
I'm gonna go a step further. Like, if you haven't read it, pause this video now. Do not go any further, and just go back and read the end.
Pause this video for what, like 8 months?
Yeah, I don't care. I don't care if you lose views on that. Go back all the way to the front. It's really good.
It is good. So yeah, from here on in, we're just going to go into spoilerific thoughts. All thoughts about spoilers. And I guess to start with, I have been keeping a tier list of what I thought of the book's first read through. And we might as well just have the final one here.
Yeah.
So the final tier list, at least for me, in C tier, we've got The Eye of the World, Fires of Heaven, and Crossroads of Twilight. I think Crossroads is the weakest of the bunch. You would probably say Eye of the World, because you actually stopped reading because of that one.
Oh, yeah. And Fires of Heaven I haven't read. Crossroads of Twilight is in that very, like,
yeah.
Okay, whatever.
So when it starts and nothing really happens to the plot, it just kind of spins its wheels a little bit. I give it more crap specifically because it was so late in the series. Whereas, like, Eye of the World, it's bad, but it's the first book, so I understand it not having its feet or whatever. And then for B tier, we got Winter's Heart, The Great Hunt, Crown of Swords, New Spring. I imagine you'd probably put New Spring higher because that's what got you back into the series.
Yeah, I'd put it in A just because like it was a new spin on characters. I was introduced to an Eye of the World, and then I saw this new and interesting take on them, and was excited to see more about them.
Yeah, I think that's the first time. I think I've heard the death is a feather, duty is a mountain before.
Yes.
But that was like the most iconic use of it up until the last book was in New Spring. So I give it points for that. Most of the B tier ones are like, they're good. There's nothing like, they have their moments, but a lot of it's just kind of like, whatever, filler stuff, at least to me. Going into A tier, I have Towers of Midnight, Dragon Reborn, Knife of Dreams, and A Path of Daggers. These are all the ones that are just like solid action stuff all the way through, kept me interested, but didn't really, like, change the way I look at the world, for the most part. Path of Daggers, I believe, that's the one with the cleansing, right?
I think so.
I think it is. I'd have to imagine. It's hard to remember a lot of the stuff in the middle.
We get a little bit murky about some of the details on that.
I believe Path of Daggers was the one with the cleansing, and that was the one where it was, like, mediocre all the way through, and then, like, one S-tier moment that elevates it up into A for me. And then everything else is just like, this is just a solid book all the way through.
Yeah.
Knife of Dreams probably has one of the best prologues. The falling embers on dry grass.
Yes, it has one of the best prologues, but not the best prologue.
Yeah, I bet I think the best one is in The Gathering Storm, right?
Actually, it goes for me, The Towers of Midnight, because it has one of my favorite moments in it, and then The Gathering Storm.
Oh, okay.
But
yeah, we're getting off topic. So that's A tier. S tier, I've got The Shadow Rising, still probably the best. Might be a little bit nostalgia for me. I'll have to go back, but there's just so many good moments in that, which you unfortunately didn't read. The Gathering Storm, which felt like the true climax of the book, and almost everything after that was like falling action. There was still a lot of really good falling action. It was an experienced fight, but that was the point where I was like, yes, I understand Wheel of Time now. Memory of Light comes after that because, again, just solid all the way through. Couple moments to make me tear up a little bit. Good endings. And then Lord of Chaos, which is an example of, like, kind of like with Path of Daggers, where it's like, this was A tier up until the end, and then the ending was so good that it's had such a great moment that it elevates it above everything else.
For me, it would go Lord of Chaos because, again, like you said, it's just so solid and has a really great ending, but it gets that extra thing that, like, New Spring and, like, the opposite for Eye of the World. It got me back into the story.
Yeah.
Then it actually goes A Memory of Light because I feel like the point you're going to make about Gathering Storm is actually made better in A Memory of Light than in Gathering Storm. But we'll talk about that later. Okay. I would flip the two of them. But, so mine is Lords of Chaos, Memory of Light, Gathering Storm on my S tiers.
Yeah. So we there's a list. I probably won't put a visual up, but if you want to know, you could write it down or something, or just talk about it in the comments. If you have your own tier list, I'd like to hear what they are. I feel like most people kind of agree on a lot of them.
Yeah.
There's some people who, like, really love The Great Hunt. There's some people who really hate, what was the one with the Bowl of Winds in it? Was that A Path of Daggers?
I don't...
I almost feel like I need to stop and, like, get all the titles up here.
Yeah.
Here, 1 second. Yeah, okay, so Path of Daggers was the one that starts with the Bowl of... A lot of people hate that one, and I'm like, hey, pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay, Winter's Heart is the one with the cleansing. Okay, so I don't know what I was talking about. I might have to sit down and rethink this.
Yeah, we definitely...
A lot of times, basically, I just go back and look at what I wrote before, and then just add in my places. So, I don't remember my old explanations for things. But yeah, definitely Gathering Storm, Tower... Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I wouldn't say this is our final one now because we've just, like, blew all of our stuff out of the water. But...
Yeah, who knows? We may go back and make an official... Let us know in the comments, would you like to see an actual video where we sit down and write out the whole tier list?
Maybe actually do the stupid tier list.
The tier list maker thing or whatever.
Yeah.
Would that be popular? Would you like to see that, chat? Let us know down in the comments. But yeah, with that out of the way, let's talk... I guess we should start with Memory of Light specifically. And everything, again, I don't know what we could say that we didn't say at the beginning as far as, like, it does everything you could want it to do.
It did one thing that I didn't expect it to do, though. It gave us perspective on a character that I had not gotten a perspective on, and he's freaking hilarious.
And who is that?
Oh, I can't remember. It's basically Matt's right-hand man.
Oh, Talmani?
Yeah, Talmani. We haven't really gotten any perspective from him, and then he's like, he's the funniest damn character.
I always want to call him Tamales.
But yeah,
but I know it's not that.
I do love his like inner monologue of like, people don't laugh when I make jokes. Yeah, it's very strange.
It's one of those things that like the story has been doing all this time where, you know, Perrin is always like, man, I wish I was good at talking to girls like Rand is. And Rand is like, man, I wish I was good at talking to girls like Matt is. He's always getting barmaids on his knee. And Matt's like, I wish I was good at talking to women like Perrin is. He never gets slapped.
Yeah, it's
like they all kind of underestimate. And it's the same thing, like, all this time you've had Talmanes next to Matt, and he's always been like, Talmanes, you never laugh. You have no sense of humor. And he's just sort of like, ha. And then you get inside his head, and his sense of humor is just different from everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
He's just more of a private guy.
He's a dry British kind of guy, I'd say.
I don't know, I almost feel bad that he didn't die in the prologue. I feel like he kind of should have, with how much he did. It would have been a noble sacrifice, and it's strange that they managed to heal him from everything that he went through.
I liked that. I like the fact that he didn't die just because the fact that, like, I want that humor to continue in that world.
Yeah.
Someone who was just that like that dry British humor, because he's definitely got that going on.
Yeah, I do love that moment though, where it's like at the beginning of the prologue, he gets sliced by a Murdral, and they're just like, oh, their blades have poison in it, you're slowly dying, and there's just like black veins creeping along his arms. He's like, how long do I have? And they're like, an hour, 2 hours at most, and then like 3 hours in, he's just like completely pale with like black lines everywhere, and everyone's like, are you still alive? And he's like, just barely, we gotta keep going. He fights another Murdral, and the Murdral's like slicing him up and is like shocked that he's not falling back. He's like, I found the key to fighting Murdral. You have to already be dead. Then it doesn't matter.
Again, my favorite part, second favorite part for him is that, but my first favorite is literally just him saying stuff like, inside his head, like, nobody gets me when I make my jokes. They think I'm serious. Like, oh, so I'm glad he's too funny for this world. He shouldn't have died.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if he'll be much of a character in the show. I feel like you got to include him.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like a lot of the band of the Red Hand people might get like mixed together because none of them are super important, other than maybe Jane Farstrider.
Yeah. That scene is one of the scenes that made me tear up.
Yeah.
Because, like, you get it from Oliver's perspective, and you haven't really gotten much of his perspective. On most of it, it's very childish, and then you get these very sad glimpses of, like, everybody's trying to keep him safe, and he just keeps saying, people keep leaving me.
Yeah.
And then, what did Jane call himself before?
Noel.
Noel. Yeah, he's, like, Noel shows up as, like, when he blows the horn, and his first thoughts weren't, oh, great, I'm saved. It was, of all the people that have left me, one of them came back. Oh, God, it's hurting I'm crying a little bit right now with saying that line.
And it's interesting. Again, Robert Jordan and I guess Brandon Sanderson just have this way with perspective where it's like, yeah, we've seen Oliver in every show. He's like, 7 or 8 years old? He's like very young. And everyone's just trying to keep him out of danger. They're constantly sending him away and making sure he doesn't get hurt. And, you know, to the adults, it makes sense. You're trying to protect the kid. But to the kid, all they know is, like, they send me away and then I never see them again. And everyone just keeps leaving me. They keep going off and dying. And they won't let me try to help or try to protect them or anything.
Absolutely adore in the last battle, like, his thoughts aren't like, oh, we have to save the world. It's like, no, I have to survive so I can train with the Aiel. And then I can find that Aiel that killed my parents. And then I can kill that Aiel. Like, he's very, like, in his own story.
Oliver is Wheel of Time Batman.
Yes. I love that.
He's slowly training his way up. The adventure of all the many things you could make sequels about this, Tuan and Matt sort of riding around in the Shan-Chan Empire.
I fully say that Mogedian's rise to power through manipulation, even though she's being confined, I want that story, because that would be something that I can fully envision.
I want the story of Oliver becoming, like, a fake Aiel, and then, like, Batman training his way.
No. He leads the Chuff Faiel.
Cha Faiel.
Like, that's his destiny right there.
Somehow he gets up there. He finds his way to connect with all three of them, and he finds Rand again, even though Rand's not Rand. Which I guess that's one of the things that I really don't understand how that happened or why that happened.
Is that he's now in what's his nuts body?
Morden's.
Yeah. Moradin's body.
Yeah. He switched bodies with the bad guy at the very end, and I'm not sure how or why.
I don't mind it. It's a very, like, hand-wavy way of giving Rand anonymity at the end.
Anonymity, and also, like, a new body that doesn't have, like, horrible scars and has his hand back and everything.
Mm-hmm. Though I love Nynaeve's reaction, because, like, because they're bond with him, Elaine, Avienda, and Min are all like, he's not dead. And they're very much, like, mourning him half-heartedly, and Nynaeve's like, what do you know?
One of you three know something, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
And then Cadsuane kind of figures it out, because she's Cadsuane, of course.
And I love that, like, in the moment where she, like, confirms it, she immediately walks into she says, is it an ambush? And I'm like, like all the other sisters come around and like, so we've lost our Amerlin. You're 300 years old. Like, you can
do. I'm too old for this shit.
You can feel Cadsuane, like, being like, can I die now?
I thought I would be done with this. I'm the battle Aja, and the final battle's over, so I figured we'd be done. Whatever.
But speaking of losing the Amerlin, that's the point I was wanting to make of, like, you said that the pairing of, in the Gathering Storm, of Rand on the top of Dragon Mount and Egwene at the top of the White Tower doing that.
Both of them uniting the different parts of themselves.
I say BS. The thing that literally, like, folds the story in on itself is Lews Therin creating Dragon Mount with power unimaginable, and Egwene as the Amerlin taking all of that she has to keep the world together and creating this crystalline mountain that it dissolves, admittedly.
Yeah, the Flame of Tar Valon.
The Flame of Tar Valon. It's this very, like...
Reverse Balefire.
Yeah, it's literally...
Where Balefire erases people and things from the pattern and, like, destroys their soul, she creates this sort of reverse weave that, like, pulls the world back together and fills in the cracks. Because people are using Balefire, and there's this thing throughout the story where cracks just kind of begin to show up on the ground, and they look in and it's like, they're not like regular cracks. They're like filled with darkness and like smoke is coming out of them. Or they're like, I don't think that's like a crack into the ground. I think that's like a crack in reality. I think reality is unraveling because you're messing with time by burning people out of existence.
Which, again, like, to put it more into a poetic thing, like, Lews Therin breaks the world. Egwene
brings it back together. Yeah,
like,
she sews it back up.
That and also just the idea of, like, this, I can't think of a cooler, like, dying moment of, like, her crystalline with the scepter in her hand, or the rod in her hand.
Yeah.
Just encased in this very, I picture it as being purple. I don't remember if they gave it a color, but this very, like, amethyst purple looking, like, crystal spread out. People, like, dark friends.
Every dark friend it touches, just this huge wave. They just basically get frozen in crystals. And she just wipes out. They're like, oh, all the enemy channelers are gone. They're like, how many of them? Like, no, all of them. She somehow killed all of them.
And I love that. It's just very much like, well, that's a big play.
It's one of those things that, in general, why I think Memory of Light doesn't quite hold up for me is that Wheel of Time in general was one of those series that started very, like, high magical. Mm-hmm. And one of the cool things about it is that as you went through it, as you learned more about channeling, it became more sort of like science-based, or at least like there was a formula to it. You know, channeling is not, it's not just like whoever feels the most emotions is the one who does the thing. Like, no, it's a skill. It's a skill with very specific weaves, and you have to have talent, and you have to practice at it and stuff like that. It made it feel more concrete. And Memory of Light, even though it's good on a emotional scale, it's good like literary to break the rules every once in a while and have someone do a miracle. It felt like there were a lot of moments where it's just like, and all the rules are off the table. Like, even though she's at the end of her power, she just comes up with this magical anti-balefire and pulls everything together.
I like it because you actually see the process is why she's doing it as well.
Yeah.
Like, it's very much like, not just like anti-balefire, it's like Perrin a book and a half ago was like, it's only a weave. It's only a weave. It's only a weave. And then she's been funneling that around in her head. And then she's like, balefire, if it's only a weave, there's an opposite end to that weave.
Yeah, like, that's the thing, is it is still scientific. It's something that's put together, which means you can you can engineer something that is the opposite of it, that counters it.
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, it kind of fits in, but it's still, I don't know, I feel like I expected more from Wheel of Time to just end with like an emotional outburst that somehow solves everything.
Well, it doesn't actually solve everything.
Not everything.
No, it solves most of the combat.
Yeah, or at least that part of it. The fight is still going on long after that, and they're still outnumbered.
There's still Demon Dread just stomping over everybody.
Yeah. And I do want to make it clear, I still love that moment. That is still absolutely a great moment. This is still absolutely an S-tier book. But the only reason this doesn't become, like, the best of the S-tiers for me is because this is the one where it kind of fell back onto magical stuff, both with this and then like the ending, where suddenly we have things that you just kind of have to take on faith, that you can't really understand, that aren't really going to be explained, and I guess don't need to be explained. But I don't know, I kind of like a little bit more explanation than what we were given.
I can understand that, but that's why I like it, because again, for me, it's very much this like folding back. It's like the in Gathering Storm, it's a very like pinpoint moment of like combining those two things, whereas this takes the whole book and makes it into that wheel. It's like the breaking has been undone, and it's. I
guess the thing for me is that specific moment is kind of this tying together of Lews Therin, the dragon soul, and what it did 1,000 years ago, with Egwene as she's going to be remembered as the young Amerlin who did the Flame of Tar Valon. It's like these two legendary figures doing the things that they'll be known for generations to come. Whereas in The Gathering Storm, it's Rand and Egwene, these two friends, and it's a much more personal journey about them uniting their things.
Yeah.
And as cool, as epic, as like world-spanning as that last moment is, yeah, I was touched more by how they, as friends, got back together.
Yeah, oddly enough, the touching parts for me in these books has been very different. And though even this book was a lot more emotionally problematic for me, because I have, as we've all figured out through all these videos, I've had prior knowledge through dumb decisions of Wikipedia. And I've known so many different characters were gonna die.
You can't help but look stuff up.
I just can't. I'm curious. But yeah, like, I didn't expect like Suan's death to just be like, and it's done.
Yeah.
But the one that even though I knew she was gonna get folded back into the wheel and all that stuff, or bound back to the wheel, Brigitte's death was still unearthly brutal, man.
Yeah.
Like, you just like. I thought, like, oh, she's going to stab her in the stomach and she's going to bleed out. No, you're like, stab her stomach, head.
They had to completely decapitate her so that, like, 10 minutes later when they blow the Horn of Valon and, like, all the legendary heroes come back, when she steps out of the mist and, like, that woman thought she was Brigitte Silverbow. Like, yeah, arrow through the chest. I am Brigitte Silverbow.
You know it. Though I did actually fear very much for Elaine in that moment, because I'm like, I know she's going to survive, but maybe they will take the babes. Like, holy crap, that's dastardly.
That got superly dark at the very end.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, I think that's the great thing about The Wheel of Time as a series, right?
Mm-hmm.
And some of it's due to just amazing writing. Like, don't get me wrong, it is amazingly written. But, as some people have said, when you have 15 books, you have a chance to do just about everything.
Yeah.
And I guess that's Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson's real key strengths here, was using that time very well. There was some stuff that you could probably cut out. Like, you could probably cut out maybe a book of this. Like, you could combine, like, Crossroads of Twilight and Winter's Heart or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, like, every moment has some element of world building, or it has a payoff later, or it relates to something. Like, you know, even all the stuff with Morgaze, where she didn't factor into a memory of light at all. But when it went to Rand confronting the Dark One, he was like, you know, how does he know that good exists? Because of all the shit that Morgaze went through, and she didn't give up.
Mm-hmm.
After losing her kingdom, and losing her children, and losing everything, and becoming like a slave, she still pushed on and never gave up hope.
Oh, there's so many different things. Like,
my point was just going to be like, that's the great thing about it, is like, you like your moments, I like my moments. And it's not even that, like, we've interpreted things differently. It's just that there is so much good in this book that no matter what kind of story you're looking for, what kind of emotional beats, whether you like character-driven stuff, world building, big overarching stories, little personal stories, side characters, main characters, you're gonna get it. There's tragic romance, there's love at first sight, there's people that, like, build up their relationships over time, there's monogamy, there's polyamory, there's all sorts of shit, baby.
Why'd you gotta remind me of Gareth Bryn and Suan? Such a sad story. They found love
on the battlefield.
They found love in a hopeless place. And then they just...
Yeah, and that's even when it comes to the final battle, like, you know, there are some people like Egwene who have these big final stand moments, and there are some people like Suan who, despite fighting everything, just gets hit with a fireball and dies.
Mm-hmm.
And not doing any, like, I guess kind of warning Min or whatever, or Gareth Bryn who just runs off and dies.
And then there's, like, yeah, like I said, Davram Bashir, where I just said, like, I thought that there was going to be this whole thing. Like, no, he's killed in, like, a flashback sequence of sorts. Like, Rand is just, like, overlooking the battlefield, and he watches them ride off into a death charge.
Yeah. I thought Iltrude was done, or what's his name? The other great general?
Rotul Ituralde.
Ituralde! I could never get that right.
I have to say his full name, because you're just saying his last name, and I'm like, what?
Yeah, he like fell off a cliff or whatever, and they're like, oh, he's out, we lost him, and I was like, oh, he died too. And then at the end, he's like, sitting in like a cot, and they're like, a bunch of merchants like, you've got to become the king. He's like, I'm not the king. The king is dead. It's like, what about the merchant? The merchant council is dead. Like, someone's got to take over this country.
Oh, yeah.
You're our greatest hero now.
I do love, like, the endings for a lot of people. Avienda did the one thing that she expected to do, which she wanted to take the Dark One as a guy shine. She got the next best thing. Yeah. She got a very
Forsaken,
very powerful Forsaken, completely under compulsion.
I also love that, like, the last thing she did before that was basically combine her Maiden of the Spear training with her Wise One training, where she, like, runs up and makes a spear of fire and then, like, launches herself at the Forsaken.
Mm-hmm. Also, the ups and downs of Mogedian's journey.
Yeah.
Where, like, oh, she's free. The Dark One's off fighting. I could get out of here. I'll take on the guys of Demondred. Ah, yes. Cannons? What?
Yeah.
And then she's just, like, skulking around. Like, at the end, you're like, oh, she's gonna get away. Maybe she could be a thing for maybe a different story. And, like, nope, latch.
Lip just collared again.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I guess you mentioned cannons really briefly. There's one of the few things I wanted to talk about that is really cool that made me think that I love about this is, again, not only the character moments, not only the story beats, but one of the things that Wheel of Time always does, right, is like it takes an idea like the gateways, and over the course of the story, it explains like everything you could possibly do with gateways. There was another episode I did with Dan, one of the more popular ones, where we covered The Ables, which was about a bunch of superheroes that had, like, disabilities and stuff. And Dan was like, you're being really nitpicky. When I'm like, this guy has the ability of telekinesis. Can't he, like, pick himself up and fly? Can't he, like, if this guy can teleport, how does he know this? How does he know that? I had all these questions and it didn't answer it. And I love that this answers it and then also comes up with stuff I would not even have thought of.
Mm-hmm.
And again, one of the primary examples being, like, they have this idea of gateways, right? You make these portals that go from point A to point B. And someone's like, well, what if we put it horizontally looking down and the exit was like 2 miles above the battlefield so the generals could look down over what they're doing?
Mm-hmm.
And what was his name? Demandra. It's like, we didn't even think to do that in the War of Power back in the Age of Legends. I was like, really? Well, I guess they might have had cameras or something like that. Who knows?
I super love the fact that, like on that same point, that my boy Andral is just, he starts off as like, oh, he's just page boy. He could just make portals. Oh, it's so dumb.
And then they link him up with like 8 Aes Sedai and Ashaman.
And you can hear the epic music as he pulls open a giant gateway to the center of Dragon Mount. And boom.
He's like, all I could do is make portals. They're like, that's pretty weak. He's like, I'll just make a portal the size of a city and unload like a river of, like a tidal wave of magma from the core of the earth on your army.
And
hot diggity daffodil.
And also on the game, the same venue of like changing an idea of like, 2 books ago, they're like, oh, let's introduce this really horrifying town, Hinderstap. Oh, it's such a, like, oh, this is such a terrible place.
Well, I remember we were like, this seems really weird. It's like a little horror movie set aside, where it was basically, it was this town that had been corrupted by the Dark One touching the earth, so that every night at sundown, all of the citizens go crazy and start attacking each other violently and, like, killing each other. But then at dawn, they all wake up back in their beds as if nothing had happened, except for all the doors and windows and stuff are still broken.
And Matt saw that and was like, oh, that's horrible. An undying supply of soldiers.
Yeah.
You know what? That doesn't sound horrible. And I love that in the chapter that they introduce it, they don't like out and out say like, yes, they've weaponized Hindertap. It's this Ashaman who's like, I've been to this, I keep opening a portal to this town. Why? And then just all these random farmers just run out and attack people.
It was a specific place where the Dark One, or the forces of the Dark One, had dammed up a river because Trollocs can't go across running water very well. Mm-hmm. So they dammed up the river so they could run across it and fight. And they had kept some dreadlords there. And the one Ashaman's like, yeah, I could destroy the dam. I would probably be killed in the process. They'd put it back up. But Matt told me to just come here, open this portal once at midnight and once again at dawn. And I don't know. He's like, I opened it at midnight. A bunch of like untrained farmers and shit just ran out and got massacred. And then, he opens it again at dawn. And he's like, those aren't just people that look the same. Those are the exact same people. How in the light is this possible? They're like, even the Murdral are scared. They don't know what's going on. They're like, how is this possible?
I killed you. I killed you.
Yeah. I killed you specifically. You remember that when, like, crazed townspeople come at you with scythes and stuff.
Mm-hmm. And I just love that. Just like, hey, this place that's a horrifying nightmare playing. Like, you know what? I'm going to utilize that.
Yeah. Find a way to utilize everything. And that brings me to one of my other, like, favorite little, like, lore-building moments is just Tuon finds out that Min can see the future. Or at least she could see visions about people. And, everyone knows that Min can see the future. There are all these kings like, tell me about this noble, tell me about this. And Tuon's just like, you sit by me on the throne, I'm gonna parade my soldiers by me. You tell me, like, every soldier what you see. And she's like, that guy's gonna get married soon. And she's like, quick, bring that soldier up. You're on the front lines and you're forbidden from being married until after the battle. Now I have an invincible soldier. But Min's like, I don't think it quite works like that. She's like, you leave the interpretations of the prophecies to me, all right?
No, the omens.
The omens. Yeah, they're omens, not prophecies.
Because, even Min starts calling them omens.
Yeah.
I forget, does Min continue to be roped into that by the end of the book?
No, she's back at the thing with Rand at the end.
Okay, because I do remember, like, she's just like, I have to get out of here. Yeah. This is crazy. I don't like this.
Yeah, but at the same time, Matt's like, I don't want to do this to you, but I'm sure if Rand wants you anywhere, he wants you near Tuon, so that you can maybe convince her to fight on our side. Mm-hmm. She's like, yeah, that's probably better than just running messages, which anyone could do.
Yeah. Oh, man. But I think we've gotten enough into A Memory of Light. I believe you have a top 10 moments that I wish I'd actually finished, but whatever.
Yeah, top 10 moments in the Wheel of Time, top 10 moments in the series overall, which I wrote down. I guess, if we're going to talk about Wheel of Time overall, we could start with the top 10 moments. Okay, so, and then I should clarify, the reason I did this is because after I finished the book, I of course went to YouTube and started absorbing all the Wheel of Time content that you have to have finished the books to understand. And a lot of those there's a lot of people who have made a top 10 best moments of the Wheel of Time.
Ooh. And just so you know, I'm probably going to around the last 3 or 4 or 5. I might have some for myself, but I never really made a formal list.
Yeah. To be fair, this was surprisingly more difficult than I thought because there's a lot of people that don't have specific moments. They're just like, I like all of Egwene's character arc. It was just neat. Everything Perrin did in the World of Dreams was cool.
I mean, if you looked at my list I tried to go through every book and be like, parts that I really like. And like I said, I got really muddled around the middle.
Yeah, the overall story just really good.
One of the parts I put on there was, Egwene in the White Tower.
The whole 3-book arc where that happened. Yeah. So, okay, number 10 is one of the few things from the first couple books that I really liked. And this is from The Great Hunt, where Rand does the portal stones to try to take people to Talmon's Head, where the Shanshan are. And in doing so, everyone visits, alternate realities, where they see how things would have played out if they were slightly different. Mm-hmm. And it was one of the best uses of alternate dimensions that I've ever seen. One of the first truly creative moments that made me, love Wheel of Time. Just this thing of, over and over again, Rand living on a farm with Egwene, and he can channel, but he doesn't quite realize it. And then one day, Trollocs and Phage just roll over everything. And right before he dies, he just hears this voice whisper, I win again, Lews Therin. And then suddenly he's a knight in Elaine's court, who's secretly the queen's consort, because he made it to Caemlyn and never went any farther. And Caemlyn is the last bastion in the final battle, and then a column falls and he gets crushed, and he hears I win again, Lews Therin. Just all these possible timelines. You see it through Rand's perspective, and then he comes out and he's just oh god, I need to keep everyone with me. That's the thing he realizes was if he leaves Perrin behind, if he leaves Lan behind, if he leaves anyone behind, he's screwed. He needs everyone. But then Matt runs over to Rand. He's like, I would never betray you, right? You're my best friend. I swear, on everything, I would never betray you. Just everyone has the experience. You only see Rand's, but it really does change Matt for the better going into the 3rd book. And also there's a whole thing about there's a dark friend leading the army in the 2nd book with Rand that you don't know. And then after the portal stones or whatever, they get attacked and he holds them off and he's like, I saw what happens. I saw what happens if I betray you. The Dark One never gives me what I want. I've been a fool. We've all been fools. And he has this great moment of I know I can't find redemption, but I'll try as hard as I can.
That's pretty cool. I like that, yeah.
Yeah. So that was a great moment. Not super big. The portal stones really didn't factor into things in the long run.
Not really.
They used them against Perrin to bring Trollocs.
And it became obsolete when you could make your own portals.
Yeah. So they had that. Number 9 is It's Just a Weave.
It's just a weave. Flicking off a balefire.
Yeah.
Oh, that's such a cool moment.
If I had to sum up all of Perrin's moments in the World of Dreams into one badass moment, it was that one. Where he runs into Egwene and they're also in the World of Dreams. And he's, way more powerful than she is.
I would actually have to put in there, not that. I would have to put in, the final moment for him in the A Memory of Light, where he's literally, warping in and out, in and out.
That was really cool, the flickering between worlds.
It's
and
very
going from the battlefield to the dream battlefield.
I love how even before that, it's very DBZ. He's just like, warp behind, warp in front, warp behind.
And now we're standing on the water, and now we're standing on the side of a building, and he's turning into a... He does so much cool stuff, but I feel like this is the epitome of, like, you know, and then someone fires balefire, and he stares, and it bends around him. Like, that is the proof of I am master of this world, and you do not tell me what happens.
Also, I really like the idea of them, like, just watching that and just having Goku and Naruto just being like, wow, that's some good shit right there.
Naruto's like, write that down, write that down. Yeah. Number 8, again, if I had to have a moment for Egwene, I've tempted to do the Flame of Tar-Valon, but the one that stands out for me is her fighting the Forsaken and Tel'aran'rhiod, fighting against Masama. That whole speech where she's just like, I am not a person. I am the Amerlin seat. This mountain has stood for 3,000 years, and you are an insect.
And breaks her freaking mind.
Like, breaks her will with her will. Like,
so not,
awesome.
Not her with the rod and defending the tower against the Shan-Chan.
No. I feel like, you know, again, her whole story arc is her becoming the Amerlin, and I feel like that is the climax of it, where not only does she have the power with the Accepted and the Rod of Vora, or whatever it was called, this is where, like, her willpower embodies the institution, and that is what gives her power.
I also do like that in the tower when the Shan-Chan are attacking, like, there's a Green who's been alive for, like, 100 or so years. She's the Battle Aja, and this child comes in and is just like, I have a battle plan, we're doing this.
Get down, watch out.
She's like, I'm a Green, I should be the Battle Aja. Okay, alright. Yeah.
So, number 7, Null returns. I couldn't get past, you know, they're side characters, but that, you know, brings a tear to my eye. He came back. Oh. Just that one little phrase, someone finally came back.
Oh, God.
Slightly above that, Land vs. Dimendred, which is the climax of, like, Land's journey, really.
It's literally, like, any kind of fight that's been in this story is, I think, summed up by the sentence he says, like, death was a feather. It was a feather yet again, as he, like, stabs Dimendred through the throat.
Death is a feather. Duty is a mountain. Where he's like, yeah, again, I did not come here to kill you. Or I did not come here to win. I came here to kill you.
I understand. You didn't listen. I am not the man who is going to win. I am the man that will kill you.
Yeah. Who are you? Are you Althor? Are you Luce Theron? I'm just the man who's going to kill you. Yeah. But just again, that whole idea of, like, you know, that phrase, death is a feather, duty is a mountain. That's such a core theme of what it means to have duty. I've never felt that sense until that phrase. That phrase, it makes everything. And yeah, it embodies this idea of giving up your life. You only die once. It's over pretty quick. Duty is the hard thing.
Mm-hmm. It's that idea of, like, what's easier to do, dying for something or living for something. But I'll also, oddly enough, to just segue into your next thing, that's not the best Land thing.
Well, see, this one, I'm not even sure if I count it as a Land thing, because it's more of like a Nynaeve thing.
It's a couples thing.
It's the Mandragorans thing.
Yeah, it's the Mandragoran. The Mandragorans. Now I'm picturing, like, black and white with, like, the Land comes in, takes off his hat, sits his sword down. She's like, walks over with a tray. She channels
him over some coffee. But yeah, this is the number 5 is the Golden Crane flies for Malkier.
I remember that specifically for the fact that I texted you that in all caps and was so excited.
Just that scene in the bar where, like, the hooded figure walks in and is like, your king rides for the kingdom. He rides for Tarmon Gaiden.
My favorite part is the perspective of the man who's just like, until that moment, and she says that to him, he's a merchant.
Yeah.
And then she says that to him, and he's very much like, he's conflicted for all of, like, a minute, and then he's like
laughing and crying at the same time. He's like, this is so absurd, but my whole life has been waiting for this moment.
Yeah.
Number 4 is the Cleansing.
Oh, God.
One of the best fights, just this sign of everyone coming together. One of the first times you see Ashaman and Aes Sedai working together, just channeling all that energy, all the Forsaken. Such a great moment.
The Cleansing, I would say, is the moment where Wheel of Time went fully anime. Yeah, like, because they don't even show the... It's very much like the 2014 Godzilla fight, where it's like, it's not like, oh, we're going to hold on the fight here. It's like, here's several different perspectives.
Yeah.
Just try and figure out what's going on.
Going around all the different things. Slightly above that, at number 3, Dumai's Wells. You cannot have a best of Wheel of Time moments without Dumai's Wells. It is like the best battle.
For me, number 3, I know it's silly, has to be that epilogue moment in Gathering Storm, or...
The prologue?
The Towers of Midnight, sorry.
And which one was that again?
That's the one where it's the Borderlander.
Oh yeah, when the Trollocs first start coming in.
Because that feels like the end of a story for me, and I like that. I like that moment. It's very much like, yeah, the Borderlander is standing there, and he sees that there's a big wall of dark
Trollocs just on their way, and he's like, "Send my son out to be a rider," and his son's like, "Oh, I sent out what's his name? Like his brothers have already died fighting in the war.
And he's
the
smaller
only one left.
And faster.
He's faster. He'll get there before I will."
And before that fight, he's literally like musing, like, "Ah, yes, my son will soon turn 13. I'll
give him his first sword in a couple weeks." And then he just like takes down the sword. He's like, "I know you're not 13 yet, but clearly you're a man."
And I'm like, oh. As a man who wants daddy issues, a little bit of daddy issues on me on that. Sorry. But yeah, that's a 3 for me, just because that was one of those few moments that made me just like stop and be like, I gotta take some of these tears out of my eyes. Yeah,
that was a really good moment. I'm just not sure if it's like a great like Wheel of Time moment. Like that could work in almost like any story.
It could work, but I just like that's just a personal.
It's the same thing. Like one of my favorite moments from the whole series that didn't make this list.
So we're going for specifically like stamp of Wheel of Time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great moments in the Wheel of Time.
But
there's the prologue from the Gathering Storm. That little aside with the farmer who's like, nothing's growing and he's not sure what to do, and the blacksmith comes by and they're like, "Melt down your scythes, melt down your hoes, make swords out of them, make armor, go north, the final battle is coming." There's just something that like brings in the scale of what the final battle is so much when like it goes to an average person and even they're like, "I don't know what else to do but fight."
Yeah.
Like, and you know, this fight is literally, like, it's all or nothing. Like, it doesn't matter what you got going on or what you had going. Make weapons, go north, find where people are fighting. You're going to be needed.
And I know this is a little weird, but it kind of, I like the inverse of kind of a biblical interest, biblical imagery that he actually puts into that, because in the Bible there are parts in there that says, beat your spears into plowshares and all this stuff, and it's the opposite of that.
Yeah.
Like, instead of being like, oh, this is a time for peace, it's like, this is the time for war.
Yeah, peace is no longer an option. But yeah, those are good, but those are like honorable mentions. 3, still Dumai's Wells. Number 2, from the 4th book, the climax of the 4th book for me, Rand experiences the history of the Aiel through the portal stones. That is the moment, I think, when most people sort of realize, like, this is a science fiction story, or at least partially. They realize the extent of the world building. You get to see a little... You never saw this because you didn't do the 4th book, but...
I got to see the inverse of it.
Yeah,
actually.
You got to see starting in the future and going back in time. So just having Rand, like, see a current Aiel and then go back through the breaking of the world so that you get to experience every part of it, back into the Age of Legends, to see the moment when the boar gets broken open and the Dark One is released upon the earth. Like, it's just amazing, and it does so much for the world building, and it says everything, like, about, like, Wheel of Time. And then the final number 1, which, again, for me, like, this hits... I was surprised when I saw the list of people who doing top 10s, because no one else had this, but this was the moment that, like, again, cemented what Wheel of Time is to me. Just Rand on Dragon Mount, thinking about destroying the world, trying to find out what his purpose is, and then just that voice of Luce there and, like, why are we here? To try again and do better. To try to be just a little bit better.
I would actually, I agree with that one, but it's also tied with Perrin's moment for me. The moment where he's building the hammer.
A lot of people had that. I don't know why that one just didn't hit me as well. I feel like he already kind of like knew what he was doing at that point, and then it was just a matter of putting it into place.
But that's the thing. Perrin's in his head a lot.
Yeah.
A lot more than Rand or Matt is. And it's established throughout there. And this is him literally doing what people who actually are in their head too much do. doing a task that they know about, but it's infused with such power and such just energy that it actually creates something, and it also solidifies something inside of him, and I liked that.
Yeah. It was a really good moment. I think it would have been better if he used the hammer for anything other than, like, he killed a Darkhound with it at the end.
Mm-hmm. And he also killed, what's-his-nuts, Slayer with it.
Yeah.
He basically...
But I think he could have used any hammer to do that.
It would have been really interesting if he had been instrumental in building the better cage for the Dark One with it, as he is a craftsman.
Yeah.
That would have been neat.
That would be neat if they could have him involved in that instead of his involvement just being stabbing Lanfear.
Yeah. Actually, he didn't stab Lanfear.
Oh, yeah, he just strangled her.
He broke her neck.
Yeah, something like that.
Though I will say that, like, that's one thing that I found really interesting about the Wheel of the Memory of Light. The most dangerous persons in the story, and the ones who got the closest to doing actual harm, wasn't Demon Dread in his big old dick swinging contest with everybody and their mother.
It was Lanfear.
It was Lanfear, and it was Grandal with her, like, manipulation of the battle.
Yeah.
Like, everybody...
The more subtle things that were going on.
Mm-hmm.
Surprisingly, I do want to say, if I have, like, a top kind of disappointing moment, or kind of, like, letdown moment, everything with Matt and the dagger at the end was just kind of like, oh, is that it? Whatever. Paddon Fane didn't really confront Rand at any point. I mean, he confronted him in, like, the 5th book or one of the...
I was really hoping that there would be, like, for Matt... they do it from the third person, so it very much feels like it's...
Yeah.
If they had done it, like, more in depth, where it's, like, him, like... they maybe had cut to him just, like, falling over... And then Matt just, like, having, like, a flashback, and you just get this feeling of dread that Matt is dead. Oh, he's dead. And then you can actually build up to him standing up and being like, you know what? When you get a disease one time, you survive it.
You're kind of immune to it.
Yeah, like...
Yeah, but
it's the framing of it.
Just in general, we didn't really learn what Paddon Fane really was, or exactly what the dagger was, or what his goals was like. I know he hated both Rand and the Dark One. Mm-hmm. But he didn't really factor into.
He also
all that
loved
much.
him. He didn't love it, but he was like friends and enemies with both. It was very like.
He was insane.
Mm-hmm.
He was crazy. It's one of those things. It's like I almost feel like you might be able to cut that out, except for it makes a important thing earlier in the story.
Also, the fact that Perrin learns that Padan Thane killed his parents doesn't factor in anything either.
No.
Like he's like, yes, I will kill Padan Thane because he killed my family. Oh, wait, Matt does it? Never mind.
Yeah. Matt does it, I'll just go kill Lanfear. We gotta do what needs to be done.
Also, I feel like Matt had a much better time with, like, Demon Dread is like,
I am the Wild of Shara. Mm-hmm. Which, yeah, I guess could have been
better
examined a little bit. Apparently there's a side story that deals with that.
I've looked into it, apparently it's 13.5 or something, there's a book about it.
Yeah. Not a book. It's like a short story. It's only like it's less than 100 pages, I think.
Wow.
Same thing. There's a short story that's about Luce Theron going to seal the Boar, which is told from his perspective, and you get to hear about the Tamerlane, the woman on the female part of the Aes Sedai that basically is like, no, none of the women are going to come help you. This is dumb. You're dumb. This isn't going to work.
We're not going to go to your sports thing, all right?
Which is broken into the... I remember when they, in the prologue to the show, on the last episode of the first season, they have that prologue in the Age of Legends, and they make through the time where she's like, blessed be you, Luce Theron Telemann. And he's like, blessed be you, some name I had never heard before. But he specifically said the name. And it's like, it's from that story.
Yeah.
I guess we have to go read the supplemental material at some point.
But I think that's a good segue into the show. Like,
yeah, I guess we should talk about the show briefly, because again, as I said about an hour ago, at the beginning of this...
long journey.
Yeah, we started doing individual reviews of the episodes because I thought those would be more popular, but either because our presentation style isn't good, or just because the channel's not very big, or maybe the show... I don't know, the show was like the most watched show of that year. Who knows if maybe Amazon's doing some twerkery or something. But...
I feel like they are, because like the show itself, it felt like at points like watered down Game of Thrones. So
I don't know. I'm still on Twitter. I am tapped into all the hashtags and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I am in with the community on there. And it's very interesting how there's a lot of people who kind of like didn't watch it when it came out, and they're like, oh, I'll check that out at some point. And then they're going through it and they're like, wow, this is really good. People who haven't read the books are like overwhelmingly positive about it.
Yeah, but
there's in fact, there was a guy who went through on IMDb and he looked at like every review that was 5 stars or lower, and he's like, 87% of them are just book readers who are upset that things have been changed.
Yeah. I mean, there's several things about the story that they changed that makes it feel like they're going to try and go in a different direction than the story should go. And it's very strange. I don't know.
The one thing that I'm worried about, and I forget who else, I think it was Nablus, if you're familiar with him on YouTube.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, he's one of the bigger Wheel of Time content creators.
Why would he go for the name Nablus?
He's the chosen one.
No, that's not a good chosen one. Go for Dragon. Hell, go for Tamerlane.
He wants to do something that wasn't... I mean, the name wasn't taken. Let's say that.
Yeah.
But either way, he said something along the lines of the biggest flaw with the show, and especially the last episode, is that the stuff that has to do with Egwene and Nynaeve. And it's just the idea that, like, they have boiled down the one power to, like, if I have tears of magic. Mm-hmm. If I feel incredibly sad, I can bring you back to life. And apparently the showrunner has said, like, no, that's not what happened. She was only partially burnt out, and burning is like a thing. Like, she just healed her from being burned, essentially.
Yeah.
And it's like, you didn't really communicate that very well.
Not to mention the fact that they, for some odd reason... That's my big nitpick for that episode, is that they changed it around when they could have just simply done it the other way to emphasize the specifics of what Nynaeve is good at. And what she has always been good at in the story. That she is a healer unlike anyone else.
Yeah. I mean, it made sense. That's what he was saying, though. Is like, it makes sense when Nynaeve did her first healing. Mm-hmm. Because, like, that's her first time using the power. She's a wilder. She heals people. It makes sense, But it feels like what the show is trying to do is build up these emotional moments at the sake of, like, logic. Mm-hmm. Right? Like... Egwene healing Nynaeve at the end of the battle, there's a lot of people who's like really kind of touched by that, like, oh, she helped her out, but we as the book wielders know, like, Egwene can't heal, like, to help her life, like, it's not one of her skills, and healing is not something you can just do when you really feel it.
Yeah, you have to, and also there's a lot of process. The reason why Nynaeve is so good is that she just immediately can delve. Delving is a thing.
Yeah, plus she was a healer before that. Mm-hmm. She knows a lot of medicine and stuff like that. Another example is the Shan Chan showing up. Like, that music, on point. The way the boats look, on point. The huge tidal wave, like, awesomely epic. And then you stop to think about, why did they send a tidal wave to a beach with a single child standing on
Yeah.
it? It's like, it's these moments that look visually really cool, but don't really make much sense. And I'm worried that the show might be leaning a little bit too much into trying to make stuff look cool without worrying about whether or not it makes sense.
Now, the final climactic battle between Rand and Ishamael.
That, I think, worked pretty well.
I think that was okay. I don't know if it was great. I felt like they should have had him stay as Dark One cosplay. And not
I think a lot of people still think he is the Dark One. He just took on a human form or something.
Yeah, but then...
In general, it's especially because I've been watching this with my parents, so I saw the ending again. And especially the Rand stuff, on a second viewing, I thought that was really, really good. Mm. Especially because since I knew what was going to happen, you can pay attention to a lot more, like, little quirks, the little things that are being said and phrased. And it really does kind of lead in, now that we've done A Memory of Light, to the final battle with Rand and the Dark One. This idea of, I'm going to tempt you with a perfect world, and him sort of realizing, like, no, it's not quite right, and rejecting it. Mm-hmm. And I think this idea will come back full circle when it's, Ishamael in a new body trying to keep him away, and then Rand is like, now I have all the power. Now I am the one who can build a world and show you.
Now, another nitpick of small proportions, but this is something... I wanted Lews Therin to look older.
Look older?
Yeah, because he's supposed to be 400 years in the power.
Yeah, but he's also... The Ashaman have the same... They used to call male and female Aes Sedai. They have the ageless look.
But even then, like, Cadsuane is 300 years old, and she's gray.
Yeah.
That's why I'm like... he looks like a 20-something. Lews Therin shouldn't look like a 20-something when he's going into the bore. He should look like he's a 50-something. He's like an old king.
Well, they've made a point that the only reason the Aes Sedai look like they're aging is because they use the Oath Rod.
I always thought it was because of other, like, that was that thing of...
Well, that's why they die eventually.
Yeah.
But it's the point that I'm pretty sure in the Age of Legends that they had better healthcare. So they get, like, it doesn't surprise me that 400-year-old Lews Therin looks like a 20, 30 something.
Yeah, that's just a nitpick for me. Though I will say a very big nitpick that I'm not gonna step down on. I hate Suwan's outfit. I hate the Amerlin's outfit. Like they took away the stole that looks amazing and has this really great like feel to everything out. That I understand why they did it for all the women. They make them look like they're wearing color-coded Power Ranger outfits for some stupid reason, but they did it.
Because visually it's easier to tell who's who.
Whatever. But then they take the stole, which should look cool, and they made it into a stupid neck brace thing, and I hate it.
Nah.
I don't like that look.
I don't care too much.
I have some issues with the leaning a bit too hard on the Suwan and Moraine angle, but that's...
I'm curious to see how they'll deal with that, because I feel like Swan/Gareth Bryn is something that, like, you can't go back on. Like, that has to be a part of the story.
Yeah.
Unless they gender swap Gareth Bryn or something.
Well, I mean, they always implied... It was always supposed to be implied that Swan is, and Moraine's relationship was a little bit more than that. And it doesn't... Just because she's into a chick doesn't mean that she's not bi.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what they're going to go for, and that'll be fine. But, at
least when it comes to Moraine, though, like, I don't know if they're going to have her end up with Tom. That was one of those things where it's like, when he proposes to her at the end of, which one was it?
It was at the end of...
Towers of Midnight. I was like, fucking what?
I understand that a little bit, but as a person who also had prior knowledge to it, I was kind of like, yeah, that's kind of cute. I like that.
Yeah, it's just they didn't seem to have a whole lot of... Maybe if I go back, I'll find more things of them connecting.
But it's also...
But I didn't really get it, and then, like, it didn't really pay off in any meaningful way, other than, like, Thom was at the final battle, but he could have done that even if he wasn't married to Moraine.
But yeah, like, also, Thom isn't well utilized as much in the show. He's in there for a hot minute, but...
To be fair, he's not utilized a whole... The only thing he did in the books that he didn't do with the show is teach Rand and Matt how to play instruments.
Mm-hmm. Or fight.
I guess he teaches Matt a little bit of, like, dagger throwing, but he really doesn't learn to fight until he gets his memories in the 4th book.
Yeah. But yeah, like, the show...
Well, actually, never mind. He does... There is one thing that a lot of people put on their top 10 moments that you wouldn't know because it was in the 3rd book. Which is when Matt gets out of the White Tower after being healed from the dagger completely.
Mm-hmm.
He's walking around the Warder's Field, and he happens to run into Gawain and Galad.
I've heard this story, though.
Yeah, and he's like, they're fighting with these wooden swords, and he takes on both of them with a quarterstaff, and ends up besting both of them.
Mainly because, like, range is superior at points, but...
Yeah, well, there's that whole thing where the guy training them has that little story, which they made into a side animated story for the show, where they're like, who was the greatest swordsman who ever lived? And they I forget the name, that's like some warder from a long time ago,
mm-hmm.
and they're like, and what was the only fight he ever lost? Like, a battle against an unnamed farmer with a quarterstaff.
I do like the fact that, yeah, it is kind of done that way, because also Gawain and Galad are both incredible swordsmen.
Yeah.
Like, Gawain defeats 3 blood knives in the dark. And Galad basically
Galad makes Damandred sweat, which is a lot for, like, you know.
Like, also... the one thing that I will say is kind of upsets me, and I wish that they had done, is that they had actually had a real, like, not that Galad isn't a swordmaster, but Tam versus Demon Dread, because Tam, the way they describe Tam's, like, his sword movements is so much prettier than everybody else's. And then you also have Demon Dread's where it's like, oh, he's dancing.
Yeah.
And I would have loved to have seen that sword fight, just how they would have clashed.
Tam's just too old for this shit.
Yeah.
Tam had his own moments.
Yeah.
Logain had his moments. I do really like that. That was another moment that kind of like didn't bring a tear to my eye, but sort of like, you know, it got me feeling those warm feelings where he's trying to get to that Angriel where he's like, I could have so much power, I could stand against the White Tower. And then Androl's like, there's people being slaughtered over here, like innocents, and he reluctantly goes and helps them.
Do not forget the person who also pushed him over the edge on that one, which was Gabriella.
Yeah.
Gabriella was like, she gave him that feeling that wasn't like, he didn't feel like, oh, she's manipulating him. She was like, I'm very concerned.
Yeah.
It was very, like, a very good moment.
And just that moment afterwards where he saves everyone.
He has the kid in his arm. It's very, like, superhero movie at the end there.
And he's just sort of like, I think there's still time to get back. And then, like, this farmer couple comes up and they're like, you're from the Black Tower? Like, thank you I'll send all my sons there. Like, everyone will, like, I'll tell everyone the Black Tower are heroes. And just this realize, like, maybe I don't need to have power to be influential. Mm-hmm. Maybe you can get power by doing good deeds, by being a good person. Which is one of the things I try to teach people in real life a lot, where it's like, being good is not just like a morally good thing to do, it is advantageous. It is logically sound strategy. Like, if you want to survive in this life, having a lot of friends is a great way to do so. Mm-hmm. And being nice is a great way to get a lot of friends. So it's nice to see him see that in real time, where like true power comes through strength of heart.
The more people together you have on your side, the more you can mooch. It's a thing. But no, like, I like that also just because it's not so much that I like that. I also kind of fear that moment because you realize the madness that is and the darkness that is in Logain is still very much in there, and he's been given more power and more influence. It's a very, like, worrying thing that you're like, oh, the problems aren't going away. But that's also good story writing.
It's like we were saying before. It's, you know, there's no hand-waving away the fact that the White Tower and the Black Tower are going to be at odds. They still do not like each other. They don't have great leadership, and they're going to be vying for control in this new post-Dragon Peace world. Mm-hmm. Because neither of them were ever going to be like a huge military force, but, you know, Ashaman are going to be trying to work their ways just like Aes Sedai are.
Not to mention the fact that also we have the third party in that, which are the Shan-Chan, which are very, very problematic in their treatment of people who can channel. And maybe when they bleed in with other people, they'll start seeing how, like, Aes Sedai and Ashaman can be of use or of good people without being colored.
I do like they weren't able to change Tuon, which makes sense. When you have an institution that your entire society is founded on, it's not going to be easy to break it in a conversation. Mm. But I do like that her debating with Egwene kind of, like, made Tuon sweat a little bit. Mm-hmm. She's like, well, if you are so confident that you can't channel, put the collar on then. It shouldn't be a problem if you can channel a little bit, should it?
I do feel so sad for that empty threat, though, that she gives her now, that it is empty in the long run. It was like, I plan to live for centuries! Yeah. And it's like, nope, you don't live past this next weekend, I'm sorry.
No, but there are a lot of people who hopefully saw that and hopefully can keep... Again, this idea of, like, you know, she's like, I'll allow you to have your White Tower, but anyone who wants to become a Damani should be able to come over here and be colored. Because she's like, in our society, people sometimes get skipped. Women find out they can channel, and they're like, oh no, and they run because that's their natural place. And she's like, okay, you know, if any of our accepted want to become slaves, we'll allow them. But you have to allow any Damani who wants to leave. And she's like, well, that would be absurd. She's like, well, if they're so confident and comfortable, then they should be fine leaving.
I really wish that
Cad Swain?
No, the other one.
Alviron?
Elvira, or whatever her name is. Yeah. Would literally just, like, chime in and be like, I was a Mareth Damani for 400 years. Yeah. I'm 13 still mentally.
I quite enjoy being free. I'm not sure if they could stand to put her near Tuon. She would probably try to kill her.
She would probably try and kill everyone in that camp. Yeah. She She's a broken human being.
I am a little disappointed she didn't have a bigger role to play at the end.
Yeah.
I thought the way that Min's prophecies, where it's like, she'll help you die, I thought she was going to do something other than give Rand some clothes so he could sneak away in the night.
Yeah, it's pretty dumb on that one. But, yeah, it's... that's why I would love to write a story of, like, the empire of the Shan Chan dealing with all of this crap.
Yeah, you were talking to me about how, like, this has made you want to write fan fiction for the first time.
Yeah, actual fan fiction, and not just stuff that would make me feel better about certain characters' deaths, but actual, like, straight up, like, I would love to continue the story and take it into areas.
Yeah. This is one of the examples of something like, I don't think I would want to continue this exact story or even this exact universe, but if I ever made my own fantasy universe, it would have a lot in common with Wheel of Time, because it does so much right, which I think is a good example of, like, exactly where this came from, right? Where this whole thing started, Robert Jordan has said multiple times, as, like, he read Lord of the Rings, he was like, this is amazing, but there's just a couple things that I don't like. I remember seeing one specific interview where he's like, I don't like this idea that, you know, you'd be told you're a chosen one and everyone would just go along with it. Like, there's a lot of people who would not believe that you're the chosen one. The chosen one might not want to be one. And so his whole thing was to set out and write a more sort of, like, realistic, at least from a personal interaction standpoint, of how people would react to these big monumental shaping events. And so I think I'd kind of like to take this universe that he built and, again, kind of put more of a more real, even more realistic sort of twinge on it, with less emphasis on this emotional magic that happens in the climax.
I myself have taken from the Lord of the Rings and from this is the ideas of world building and doing that stuff. I like the idea of a big fantasy epic world, but with much more personal stories. And not ones that are tied to, oh, yes, they've been prophesied for this. It's like, oh, yeah, I have to deal with my own crap in this fantasy world. You know, like, I have to deal with my daddy issues. I have to deal with my crippling debt in this world. But, yeah, like, that type of stuff.
And I think it's, for me, the big thing that I noticed, the big lesson I learned from Wheel of Time is, before this, I always thought of world building as something that was separate from, like, the point of a story, right? Like, to me, there's like, every story has a point, a lesson it's trying to teach you. And then it has characters that help push that lesson forward. It has world building to make those characters more believable, to invest you in the story so that the message hits. And this showed me that the world building can be the message. There are things that this has done with how it set up societies and how it portrayed them that made me look at how I look at other societies, how I look at nations and history, and how we get to where we are, that has made me both question some things in real life, but also become more confident in what I do believe.
Check out Hardleg political videos.
Yeah. The Hardleg political videos at least have a little bit of twinge of Wheel of Time going in there.
More, what's the specific, like, Gods and Generals, I think, is what the one thing that struck you on that. But
yeah.
Yeah.
That's neither here nor there. That's on another episode. If you want to go see the Gods and Generals, talk about religion and politics. Yeah. It's the best of both worlds.
It's the things you shouldn't talk about with your friends. But yeah,
we came through it pretty well.
Yeah. But no, this is definitely taken my reading of fantasy from being like a 3 to a 10.
Yeah.
Like I think I've gotten to a point that it's going to be very difficult to top this story. So I'm just gonna enjoy the stories that I have. But like
that's the thing. We had talked quite a bit about what we would do after Wheel of Time eventually. What do you do when Wheel of Time ends? And there are other series I would like to try. The Stormlight Chronicles is something that has potential, although I'm still hesitant to go into a series that isn't finished.
Yeah.
I believe someone else, there's a couple other we haven't started yet that might be worth at least looking into.
Also, I'd like to correct you, Joe. The Wheel of Time has not ended.
There are no endings to the Wheel of Time.
But this is an ending.
Yes.
Which, again, that line hasn't really hit much in the entire thing. It's always just been very much like, oh, yeah, great, yeah, it's not ending. And then Rand writing off and just being like, it's the end of my having to deal with all of that crap. And this is the beginning of my new life as...
whoever he is.
Trand. I'll just add a T in front of my name. I don't know.
Randall.
I'm
a Randall now.
Yeah. But yeah, just that part I also really liked. It was very... after all of the bleakness of that story, and even there was still some very bleak and blurry parts at the end, like, Rand riding off into the sunset into, like... I picture Rand literally just being like, I'm gonna get on a sailing vessel and just go wherever.
I'm gonna check out some stuff. I'm gonna have some fun. We'll see what it could be.
Yeah, like
that ending line in general. I think someone pointed out, they're like, there's so many authors who struggle to write the beginnings of their stories, and Robert Jordan found out the perfect thing, which was to write one really poetic opening and use it for every book, and then it also has that perfect. Every book starts, there are no beginnings to the Wheel of Time, but this was a beginning. And then at the end, there are no endings, but this was an ending.
I also, like, yeah, you don't know about, like, the changing of the body and all that stuff, but I do love the image of him just being like, and looking down at his pipe and being like, maybe I can, and then it just pops, and he's like, laughing as he's riding off into the distance.
No idea what that was all about. Comment in the comments if you know. At the very end, as he's riding off, he can't channel anymore, and he can't touch the true power because that was related to the Dark One. But he thinks about a pipe being lit, and it lights up, and it's like, is Rand the creator now? Does he have the ability to weave the world into existence?
I don't think he's the creator. My theory, just to push it out there, I think that because he touched the actual true power... Like the actual, like he didn't, when he was weaving the bars for the Dark One's prisons, it wasn't like he weaved air and spirit and fire. It's like, no, he was weaving parts of the pattern. I feel like he just has a immediate connection. He doesn't have to channel. It's just there. It just pops.
I don't know.
Not like he's the creator, but he has just a really untapped force.
It wasn't explained.
And
it was just kind of weird. He's just got magic power. He's out there. He can do stuff.
He's not going to use them poorly because he's Rand. He's a good guy.
Yeah, at this point at least.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, not the ending, but certainly an ending, at least for us. Mm-hmm. The end of an era. Next month, I think I'm taking the month off.
Yeah.
We're already partly into February as we're recording this. There's not time to start another book and then go through the whole thing, especially with that little vacation I'm taking, so... We'll have that month off. We're probably coming back to the book club, though. We'll find something else to read. I'm just not sure exactly if we're going to go back onto fantasy, if we're going to take a break from it for a while and try, like, another genre. Maybe do a lot more sci-fi.
Give us your ideas, if you got some.
Yeah, maybe what's the sci-fi equivalent to Wheel of Time? Is it The Expanse? I hear a lot about The Expanse.
I've heard The Foundation, so...
I read the first Foundation story, and I didn't really like it.
Yeah.
It's pretty meh. Isaac Asimov is like the epitome of, I have a good idea, and I'm not a very good writer, though. Doesn't know how to write characters.
But I think that's it for us for today.
Yeah. So, don't know what the future holds, but it holds something. One way or another, we'll probably be back here, and if not, you'll at least be on the main channel. You can come play Yu-Gi-Oh! Sometime or something, now that Master Duel's out.
Yeah.
Exciting. Anyway, until next time, good luck.
And keep reading.